Hi guys, can you see me? I had a little bit of technical trouble trying to get logged in. So drop me a little comment and let me know that you can see me. We'll give everybody a minute or two. Can you guys hear me? Hi Jean, can you hear me? All right, guys, drop some comments. We're going to talk about sleep today. This is a really important topic right now, and I've only got about 30 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep it pretty brief. But drop a little comment so I know that you're here. And then if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments too, and I'll try to answer them as we go along. But we'll go ahead and get started. So, there's a couple of things going on in the world today, and all of us, I think, are kind of feeling the stress, of the world events at the moment. And I had talked to a couple of friends, and we were sort of talking about, we're a little stressed out, having a hard time sleeping. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like this is kind of an important topic for the moment. So we'll talk a little bit about why we need sleep, why sleep is so important, what defines good sleep and bad sleep. We'll also talk about ways that, if you've identified that you have a sleep issue, maybe some easy sort of little resets that we can do to kind of tweak your sleep cycle a little bit and help you sleep a little better, so that you're, a little more alert and you're preserving your health during these really stressful times right now. So I'm working on my screen a little bit here, trying to share it. But all right, and I'll check the comments every couple of minutes as we go. So we'll start off talking about why sleep is so important. So sleep, our brains are pretty unique, and they regulate a lot of different functions within our body, and then obviously they control our mood. They also can, to some extent, can control how healthy we are in terms of immunity. So sleep actually promotes cytokine production and release. And we've heard the word cytokine thrown around a lot lately. But those are part of our immune system. And without those, we don't have a very good immune response. So the fact that most of the cytokine production and release occurs during sleep means that it's really important for us to get good quality sleep. The other thing that sleep does for us is it helps our mood. And so all of us know that when we're really tired, or we haven't, maybe you didn't sleep last night, you were up with a toddler, or maybe even an older kid, or who knows, maybe you were just up watching something fun on television. But we all know that we're really grumpy when we don't sleep. It also affects our ability to stay sharp mentally, and it can actually affect our mental health. So it can, bad sleep can worsen things like anxiety and depression, and just overall fatigue and malaise. So we kind of talked a little bit about what happens when we have poor sleep, but we have a reduction in immunity, obviously. We also have a higher incidence of depression, anxiety, and fatigue in patients who report, issues with sleep. We have increased stress hormones, and this is really a vicious cycle when we have that extra cortisol, which I'm sure we've all heard that word a lot lately too. But when you have that extra cortisol kind of floating around in your system, it does a couple of things, and it perpetuates that cycle of poor sleep, and then a even further increase in the stress hormone release. It can cause decreased libido. It can cause increased appetite and weight gain, and that's part of that stress hormone response. But the increased appetite, the weight gain, and then it can also cause increase in your blood pressure levels. So that can be really important in terms of prevention of stroke, heart attacks, all of those kinds of things. So sleep becomes important in many, many regards. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of glare outside my office from the sunlight, but so sorry if it's blinding in a minute. But the other thing that can be really hazardous when our sleep isn't well regulated is that you can have periods of microsleep. And this usually happens in pretty severe sleep deprivation, but you can actually fall asleep even while you're driving. And so that becomes sort of a hazard to our health for a lot of really, really obvious reasons. I'm going to try to turn things this way a little bit more because of the sun. Okay, so what makes sleep good and bad? So there's a couple of things that sort of quantify sorry, I'm having a hard time with words today. There's a couple of things that define how well we're sleeping. And so the two big ones, right, are how much are you sleeping? So if you're not sleeping enough or if you're sleeping too much, then we're going to have another issue. We're going to have an issue with sleep. And then the quality of your sleep. So are you staying asleep? How long does it take you to fall asleep? And some of that relates a little bit to quantity, but there are things that happen after we've fallen asleep that can determine whether or not the sleep is good. And so are you waking up multiple times a night? And if you do wake up, are you able to go back to sleep quickly? Or are you awake for quite a while? So how do you know when your sleep is bad? I think all of us can feel it. We're a little jumpy. We're extra moody. Maybe you get really hungry. Maybe your day is just terrible, if you didn't sleep well the night before. So let me know what some of the effects that you guys see when you're not sleeping well. What effects do you notice first, or what effects do you notice sort of most often when your sleep is off? There's a couple of ways. And so usually one thing that I tell people is, even if you kind of feel like you're status quo, but hang on a second, guys, I'm going to shut these blinds really quick. It's really, really bright. I apologize. I had no idea this was going to happen. Actually, maybe I can do this and just kind of block the sun a little bit. There we go. That's probably a little bit better. Sorry about that. All right. So if your partner tells you that you're not sleeping, there's a pretty good chance that you're not sleeping. So if you're the person that you share a bedroom with tells you that your sleep is horrible and you're keeping them awake all night, chances are they're not lying. They're actually telling the truth. And they can actually have disordered sleep because they're kept awake by a partner that doesn't sleep. So there's actually official diagnoses for that. So just keep that in mind. So why is our sleep crazy right now? I mean, I think we all know that there's a little extra stress in the world. Even if your job has been stable, or even if your family is healthy and everybody's doing okay, there's a big disruption in our routines right now. So many of us have children at home that are trying to finish out a school year online, and so our routines are just kind of all out of whack. You may be working from home, or you may have been furloughed. And so even your work routine is off. So you may not be waking up at the same time that you normally would. You might be, having to add a bunch of other jobs and tasks into your day. So if you are schooling children at home and working at home, you may not have very much time to sort of use or participate in those routines that you would normally associate with sleep. One of the other big things right now that doesn't get much attention, but there's actually a type of fatigue that's related to, some of the stress or the unusual nature of the stress that we may be experiencing right now. And I think Mayo Clinic actually wrote a paper on this, but it's called stress-related fatigue. And so it's almost like a mental fatigue, but it can also affect the way that you feel, and it can affect the way that you sleep. And so that's, finding ways, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but finding ways to sort of work on your stress level is really, really important. The other thing, and this one's really big, a lot of us probably are having a little more screen time than we're used to. And so that can disrupt your sleep in a couple of different ways. But the biggest way is that, all of our screens and all of our devices emit light, and light regulates sleep. So if you have, if it's light in your house until 10 o'clock at night, your brain doesn't really get the message to shut off. That's related, that's regulated by some hormones, but those hormones are triggered by whether it's light or dark, in your environment. So we'll talk about this in a little bit, but screen time is can be a big contributor to sleep issues. The other thing is alcohol and coffee. And so I saw a meme on Facebook the other day, and it's a cup of coffee running with a baton, and it's handing off the baton to a glass of wine. And so I think that, we'll all kind of get a good chuckle out of that. But I think a lot of us probably, if we're honest with ourselves, realize we're drinking maybe another cup, maybe another 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day. And then we're probably a little more relaxed in terms of how much alcohol consumption we allow ourselves to have. And so, finding ways to make sure that we're sort of limiting our alcohol within a few hours of bedtime is really, really important right now. And then the other thing is we're kind of isolated from our friends and family. And so for us, we have a lot of kids and we both work and, we're very active. And so we feel like our routines really haven't been disrupted tremendously, but the isolation from friends and family has been pretty significant. And I think people kind of have this, they have that need to connect. And so there's a little extra anxiety just because you're not connecting with people like you normally would. So knowing all of those things, how do we make sure that our sleep is preserved? And if you are having trouble sleeping, what are some simple things you can do to kind of get back on track? So, one thing I do want to point out is, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but once you do have an issue with insomnia or a sleep disorder, those really can perpetuate themselves and they can be very difficult to treat and tease out. So one thing that when I've counseled patients in the past, one of the things that I've mentioned is if you start to see a problem with your sleep or you're starting to pick up on, maybe I'm not really sleeping very good, it's really important to fix that as soon as you can. We all have times in our life where we can't fix that. We can't fix that sleep schedule because, work is crazy or, we've got something else going on with school or, maybe you just had a baby, or maybe you just have a toddler that doesn't sleep. So there's a lot of reasons where we may, there's a lot of seasons in our life where we may not be able to sort of control some of the external things that make it not possible for us to sleep. But outside of those things, if you are noticing it, it's really important for you to go ahead and try to tackle those little triggers, before this becomes a vicious cycle and before your, sleep debt has really, really accumulated. And so one thing we know that is if you're going several days where you're getting much less sleep than normal, that really affects your ability to concentrate. It affects your short-term memory. It can be dangerous for you to drive if you're not, if you haven't had enough sleep. So it's really important when you see this to really tackle it early so that you're not stuck in this, cycle. So you need to sort of identify your triggers, and some of us know what they are. I mean, I'm a mom of several small children, and so it's obvious if my kids have been up all night, well, that's easy, right? Like it's just, I can't sleep because my kids have been up. But sometimes there are things that are a little trickier. I mean, you may sort of unknowingly be ingesting more caffeine than normal, or, you might be eating a little more chocolate, you might be drinking a little more coffee, and then, you're having an extra glass of wine, and over time, you may not really realize that those things are going on. So sometimes it's really important to take a really good inventory of, your behaviors and kind of what's going on in your life so that you can reset your sleep cycle a little bit. So we'll talk about a total sleep reset pretty soon, but that'll kind of come at the end of the talk because some people are in a really, really big rut and they need to sort of totally upend their entire routine and make some really big change. But for those of us who maybe just have a few little issues, you'll want to, the best things really that you can do are to create a routine. So if you right now have just sort of let your routine go out the window, that may be the only reason that your sleep is disrupted. So it's really important to get back into that routine. Your brain really kind of depends on a little bit of a ritual to go to sleep. So the routine, though, doesn't just have to do with what you do before you go to bed. It also has to do with what you're doing in the daytime. So again, we talked earlier a little bit about how light affects our sleep. So when you wake up, make sure you turn on the lights. You want your brain to sort of get in the habit of recognizing that when the lights come on, it's time to wake up. Go ahead and shower and get dressed. I mean, unless you're exercising first or, some people need to have that first cup of coffee. kind of in a relaxed state. And so, do all of those things, but make sure that there's a routine associated with waking up. So get up, turn the lights on, have your coffee or exercise. And if you're not doing those things, just go ahead and get a shower and get dressed. And then make sure your meal times are consistent. So your brain really likes some sort of routine. So make sure that it knows that it's going to sort of eat at certain times, and you're not going to kind of go into a calorie deficit at any particular time. But it really helps regulate those hormones when you're eating consistently and you're waking up at the same time, and you're turning on the lights, and your brain just knows it's time to get up at that time. And the other thing you can do, especially if you're working from home, we need to work, we need to relax, we need to exercise, and we need to eat. So trying to make some sort of routine around all of those things will really help you in the sleep department later in the day. So before bedtime, the routine really should include some sort of dimming of the lights in your house, because this is sort of what triggers your brain to release melatonin, is when it's dark outside, or dark inside, I should say. But reducing screen time is really important for this, or even, some of us can't. I mean, we work until we go to sleep. So finding ways to use blue light filters, or there are glasses. There's even apps, I think, that you can use to reduce, to help reduce the amount of bad light that your eyes are seeing, because again, that affects when your brain decides to release melatonin and when you can go to sleep. Warm baths are really great. And then keeping your room sort of reserved for adult activities and sleep. So get rid of the TV. Don't have your office in your bedroom. If you can absolutely put it, if you can put it anywhere else, put it somewhere else. Don't associate your sleeping space with your workspace. Some of us can't avoid that, but if you can, try to reserve your bedroom for sleep. The other thing is sort of making your sleep environment comfortable for sleep. So a lot of us, my husband he likes it to be really warm when he goes to sleep, but that's actually a pretty big disruptor of sleep. So you really want the temperature to be cooler. Does anybody know what the ideal temperature for sleeping is? It's probably a lot colder. It's probably significantly colder than you think it is. So usually we say to set the thermostat, and I can't even do it this cold, guys, and I really like a cold bedroom, but usually between like 67 and 69 degrees is kind of the ideal sleeping temperature. I feel like a popsicle when it's that cold, but that's, really, if you need to reset your sleep cycle, that's a good way to do it. Make sure your bedroom's cold, a warm shower or a bath before bedtime, and then kind of going into a cool room with clean sheets. I mean, you get the idea, like you're sort of setting the stage, right? And again, your brain really relies on the stage, and it really relies on the routine. So if you're having trouble sleeping, I highly recommend coming up with some sort of bedtime routine that maybe, once you've dimmed the lights, it's kind of hard to read, but if the lights are dim and you can read, do that. But try to avoid screens, and then maybe journaling is really good. A lot of people sort of complain about, they have these thoughts at night of all the stuff that they needed to do or didn't get done today, or the stuff they maybe need to do tomorrow. Leave a little notepad at the bedside with a pen, or, something like that, where you can just jot down a few quick thoughts and kind of have almost like what I call a brain dump. Just get it all out on paper if you need to. Spend 5 minutes, rehashing your day, what went well, what didn't. Just getting that out sometimes is really, really helpful, and will allow your brain to kind of shut off and go to sleep. So some of the other things we can do, gentle stretching and meditation. Another really, really big one is exercise. So, sorry, I just shook my computer. Don't exercise right before bedtime. Again, if you can help it. We all have, crazy schedules. And so sometimes that's the only time you can get it in. If you do exercise right before bedtime and you're having trouble sleeping, that could be part of it. Maybe if you're exercising right before bedtime, try to make that exercise a little more gentle and calming and not super hardcore. But getting exercise, earlier in the day and making it having vigorous exercise earlier in the day is going to be really good. It's going to help you sleep, just sort of expending some of that energy Exercise is a great way also to reduce stress. So it's kind of a twofer. You're going to get multiple benefits from exercise, the physical benefits along with kind of the mental stress relief and sleep benefits too. So exercise is huge. And then we talked about using light to our advantage. And then there's also some herbs, some herbal teas, essential oils, and things like that that you can use to help you go to sleep. I was watching another Facebook Live video on ways that we can reduce stress. And there's a couple of supplements that are excellent for both stress reduction and sleep. So magnesium is one of those. There are a lot of forms of magnesium. And I was glad that the other speaker pointed this out. The magnesium, the L-threonate is actually really, really good form of magnesium for sleep and anxiety because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. A lot of the like magnesium oxide or I'm trying to remember what's in, some of the other forms of magnesium are really more geared towards GI issues. And so, not that those are bad, but they're not going to necessarily give you the stress relief and the sleep benefits that you're hoping to get. So Epsom salt is also another way. Magnesium is very well absorbed through the skin. Sometimes it's not really well absorbed in our intestines. So Epsom salt baths are really good, both from a muscle relaxation and a mental relaxation perspective. So magnesium is kind of the first supplement that I recommend. It also helps prevent migraine. It relieves stress. So it's a really good kind of go-to, supplement for a lot of different things. The other one is going to be L-theanine. And that's a really good supplement for sleep as well. And you can buy that over the counter. Any supplement store will have it. But that's another really, really good supplement for sleeping. And then the other, let's see. Oh, this one's really good. I love this one. So practicing kindness and graciousness. And so we all talk about sort of being, very intentional with our actions right now, having a little extra kindness towards people. Everybody is stressed out right now. Okay. The stress that we allow ourselves to experience during, any given part of the day, as a reaction to either things that happen to us or, things that are kind of going on around us, doing what we can to stay mindful and really help control our thoughts so that we're not really anxious and that we are intentionally being kind to people and being gracious toward other people will really help keep those stress hormones under check. And so from even from sort of a selfish perspective of being kind and gracious, it really can help reduce your stress levels and it can in turn help you sleep. So I like that for all kinds of reasons, but I think we could all use a little more of that these days. The other thing that you can do kind of close to bedtime is, using relaxation techniques. So deep breathing exercises, you can kind of Google that and find a lot of different information on how to do deep breathing exercises, but gentle stretching, yoga, some sort of Pilates type breathing exercises are really, really good to help kind of clear your mind. Meditation, obviously, and anything to sort of focus internally and clear your mind of kind of all of those other, the thoughts of the day and your to-do list and all that sort of thing is really important. And then the other sort of more obvious things that you can do is minimizing caffeine, really limiting alcohol before bedtime. So, I don't know about you, but I always remember my grandparents kind of having a nightcap before bedtime and they would, so it was to help them sleep. But alcohol makes you sleepy, but it definitely disrupts your sleep cycle. So all those brain waves that you have while you're sleeping, they need to fit a very certain pattern in order for your sleep to be good. And so if you're drinking close to bedtime, that's definitely going to disrupt it's definitely going to disrupt that brainwave pattern and your sleep quality is not going to be as good as it should be. And then the other thing is sort of limit high calorie and fatty meals before bedtime. And that really has more to do with your ability to digest things while you're lying flat. So if you've eaten something that's, high in fat or highly acidic or a really big meal, you may sort of experience some GI distress when you're trying to go to sleep. And that's obviously going to make it challenging for you to sleep. And then I'll kind of go into, if you guys have any questions, let me know or comments, but signs it's time for you to see a professional. So if you're having persistent insomnia or you're really just not able to figure out what's going on, it's probably time to see to see a physician about your sleep issues. And so if you're falling asleep in the daytime, if you sit down and halfway through a conversation, you're out, it's probably time to see a physician and potentially even get a sleep study. If you're waking up with headaches pretty frequently, that's also a pretty good indicator that there may be something like sleep apnea going on. And then if your significant other is saying, that you're having trouble sleeping, again, that's a really, really, really good indicator. And they usually know, and they're usually right, even though we may not always like to admit that. They usually can give you a pretty accurate picture of what's going on with your sleep. So for a sleep reset, so if you are going to go see a professional, I recommend that you put together kind of a sleep diary for a few weeks. And maybe even try what I kind of term this as a sleep reset, but this is kind of a hardcore, like follow all the rules for 3 weeks reset button. Okay. But it takes being very intentional. It takes a little bit of planning, but it can pay off big time. It's also a little bit challenging, but whenever I tell people that they need to do this, I usually refer to this as an investment in their future and in their mental health. So the way that, you do this is you kind of follow all of those rules for a period of about like 3 weeks to a month. And you're going to set a consistent wake up time, a consistent bedtime. You're going to develop a bedtime routine. It doesn't have to be long. I mean, people think bedtime routine's got to be like a spa day, but really it could be as simple as 5 to 10 minutes to kind of wash your face, take a quick shower, maybe jot down your thoughts, in a dark room and then kind of go to bed. Turning off the lights, an hour or two before it's time to go to bed is really important. I think, if you sit still in a dark room long enough, you're going to get sleepy. And then let's see. Trying to use my screen here and not cover up my camera. Making sure you're getting exercise. So that's kind of the other big one. Exercise, you've got to have some daily exercise, but just not really super close to bedtime. So make sure it's not, if you're going to bed at 9, really try not to try to get all your exercise in before like 6 p.m. And then I would say, shower close to bedtime and then have a really cool, dark room. And here's another tip. If you've got to pick between sleep and exercise, pick sleep, because the sleep deprivation is, that's usually a temporary situation, and it may be temporary for a while. I mean, it may last for a couple months or a year, but always make sure you're getting enough sleep. Don't shortchange yourself on the sleep in order to, fit in an hour of a workout. The workout will help you sleep for sure, but if you have a couple days where you have to pick between the two, pick sleep. And then work on ways to make sure you can still fit your exercise in. So really look at your schedule and your calendar. If you're not sleeping, please, at nighttime, you really need to eliminate naps in the daytime. So typically we would say a power nap is okay, like early afternoon for most people if you're sleeping well and you're just trying to sort of catch up on a little bit of sleep. But if you're sort of in this perpetual state of insomnia or perpetual state of poor sleep, then you really need to cut naps out entirely. And that you may have to do that for, like I said, about 3 weeks to a month, but you really need to train your brain to sleep at night. And then again, talking about the comfortable environment, keep a really cool room. And I mean like 67 degrees. Turn off the lights and then minimal noise. One thing that really helped us, we were renting this really small house that was, and we have 5 kids. And so this house was tiny. It had 5 bedrooms and it was, maybe 1,800 square feet. So all the bedrooms were really close together. It was all hard floors and we could not, it was just loud. So we had to buy really good white noise machines for all the bedrooms, and it made a huge difference. So we brought a newborn home, and he was able to sleep through the ruckus of the other 4 kids running around in that place because of the white noise machine. So I would say invest in one of those. They don't have to be really expensive. I think I paid probably $35 for the one that I have, and the sound is nice. It's not super tinny, like you can sleep through it. It's a really good white noise machine. And then using light and dark to your advantage. And this kind of goes back to that routine. If you're waking up in the morning, turn the lights on. And if it's getting close to bedtime, go ahead and shut the lights off And if you have to, I mean, turn off the computer, turn off your cell phone, just put it away. Yeah, you'll get bored, but guess what happens when you get bored? You tend to go to sleep. So, so do that. If you're a night shift worker, and so I have a lot of friends who work swing shifts or work night shifts, you're going to need to invest in some blackout curtains for your bedroom or for your sleep space. And when you leave work and you're coming home, try to wear sunglasses so that it appears darker. The yellow glasses are actually really good for that, for blocking out certain kinds of UV light. And then avoiding caffeine within a few hours of bedtime. I would say if you sleep at night and you're having trouble sleeping, I would cut out caffeine after 12 in the afternoon. I mean, just give it a good 8 or 9 hours with no caffeine, and that will help tremendously. So maybe have your morning, whatever coffee or tea or whatever energy drink you're using, and then, that's it for the day. And then avoiding things that provoke anxiety before bedtime. So if you're watching the news before you go to bed, maybe switch to watching the news in the morning. I mean, you're going to miss out on a couple hours worth of current events potentially, but you're also going to avoid some of the stress that might come with, watching news close to bedtime. And then if you can't sleep, whatever, and you have to get up, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you just can't go back to sleep, whatever you do, don't turn the lights on and start working, because then your brain just thinks it's time to work. And so you might get sleepy later, but that's really going to help perpetuate that vicious cycle. So, if you can't sleep, just get up and sit, or go take another shower or something like that. Maybe do some gentle stretching again, keep it dark in the house, but do what you can to try to get back in bed and get some more Z's. So I think that's really all I have for today. And so I was going to see if you guys have any questions. We'll kind of open up the rest of the time for questions or comments. Do you guys have anything that helps you sleep, that's kind of your favorite go-to when you're not sleeping very well? All right, guys. Well, I don't really see any questions. I'm going to go ahead and log out, but thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you guys are well, and you're getting good sleep, and you're managing your stress, and you're all exercising and eating a super healthy diet, and that you all stay healthy during this difficult time. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.